Welcome to the Shamrock channel, and welcome to subscribe. I have been married to my husband for many years, and we have only had one daughter. For the past 20 years, we have treated her like a little princess. We decided not to have a second child so that she could grow up freely without the responsibilities of being an older sister. Unexpectedly, our dear daughter, whom we have cared for so tenderly, is about to marry a young man who has nothing. His family lives thousands of kilometers away from us, and if something were to happen to her, we would be powerless to help. If the other party's economic situation were merely poor, I could still assist her and her father. However, the boy's monthly salary is only 4,000, and he doesn't seem very ambitious. To make matters worse, he has a 4-year-old younger brother. His parents are retired but have no pension, meaning the future burden will fall on this young couple. I patiently advised my daughter not to make a hasty choice in this matter and explained the pros and cons in detail. In response, my daughter told me that love can overcome all difficulties. That night, she pried open the locked cabinet where I kept my household registration book and eloped with a boy who was not in a good position. After she married far away and gave birth to a child, her husband's true nature was revealed. Amid the hardships of raising twins, her husband was unhelpful, and her mother-in-law only cared about herself, showing no concern for her. Eventually, she came to seek help from my husband and me, and we softened our hearts. However, she was unwilling to take any responsibility as a mother and abandoned the 2 children without a second thought. Holding on to the money from me and her father, she continued to go out and enjoy life. While I eventually collapsed from exhaustion taking care of my grandson. After being reborn, I no longer want to have any relationship with that heartless little girl. I want to start over. Now the story officially begins. Mom, I'm going to marry Adrian Falk. He is my true love. My daughter Serafina Hale tightly held my hand, her eyes shining with faith and love. In my previous life, I couldn't help but advise my daughter that I was really worried about her marrying someone so far away and being all alone. My daughter said that with the convenient transportation nowadays, she could come home anytime she wanted. In this life, I once again reminded her that Adrian's circumstances were average, with a monthly salary of only 4,000. Have you thought this through? Yet my daughter replied, I can't find anyone who understands me better than he does. I have to marry him. I could only sigh, but he doesn't even have a house or a proper betrothal gift. It feels like she's running away to elope. The daughter seemed determined. She said it was okay, and we could work hard together. I believe that in the future, we will have our own home. This scene reminded me of my past life, and I couldn't help but mention that I heard Adrian's mother wasn't easy to get along with. The daughter immediately explained that she didn't live with her mother, and as long as Adrian treated her well, that was enough. I couldn't help but twitch slightly at the corner of my mouth. Although I was still concerned on the surface, I thought about how he also had a 4-year-old little brother. If his parents encountered any problems, that little child would become a burden for you. Have you really thought this through? The daughter firmly said, Mom, love can overcome all difficulties. I felt quite disappointed, but I replied, all right, take the household registration book and go pursue your love. Since I couldn't persuade you, I can only respect your choice. I silently recorded these words, hoping that in the future, if my daughter takes the same path, these recordings would serve as evidence. When she complains to me later, these recordings will leave her without a response. I cannot stop this choice, I can only support it, but I will think carefully about my own future. Serafina held the household registration book and hugged me gratefully, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Mom, you are so wonderful. I will definitely be very filial to you in the future. Filial? If she truly wanted to be filial, how could she exhaust me so much with those 2 kids, draining all my energy? Is this considered filial piety? I feel disappointed in my daughter, and I believe she will always be my deepest pain. The difficulties she experiences will ultimately turn into accusations against me. Therefore, in the next moment after she and Adrian left with the household registration book, I immediately took my husband's hand and said, Henry Hale, we can't keep this daughter. We need to make plans in advance. Let's have another child. If natural conception doesn't work, we can go for in vitro fertilization. The husband looked rather confused. He said, "Don't we still have Serafina? Didn't you say she would inherit all our wealth in the future? Didn't you hear what Serafina just said? She didn't even think about how to take care of us when she gets married. Are you still planning on depending on her?" The husband sighed as well. After their daughter grows up, she won't prioritize her parents anymore. In my previous life, I never considered having a second child. I just wanted to give all my love and resources to Serafina, ensuring she had a worry-free life and could become our princess. But now, I find myself a bit concerned about falling behind. 10 months later, Serafina called me in tears. She said, "Mom, please help me take care of your little grandson. I'll bring the 2 children home after they turn 1 month old, okay?" The last time I agreed without hesitation, urging her to go home and telling her that her father and I would always support her. She quickly returned, left the child with us, and continued to pursue her own life. However, this time, I gently advised her, "Serafina, you are already a family now, and you can't act like a child anymore. Settle down over there, and come back when the child is a bit older." After saying this, I immediately hung up the phone. That night, I saw Serafina post a subtle jab on her social media. In the middle of the night, she shared a photo of herself staying up late with her kids, captioned, "Who can understand the struggles of being a mom with these 2 little rascals around?" I had thought that giving birth was the end of the journey, but it turns out that this is just the first step of a long road ahead. Serafina and I share a common circle of friends and family, and I noticed several relatives leaving comments in the discussion thread. "Serafina, you are the only child in your family. When you bring your child back to your parents' house, they will definitely help take care of the baby. They might feel a bit bored at home themselves." Serafina sent 3 facepalm crying emojis, looking somewhat helpless. "Serafina, why not talk to your parents? You're their only daughter, and they should be concerned about you. Considering your current situation, it really is quite simple, they have the means to hire a nanny." Serafina quickly replied, saying that being an only child doesn't necessarily mean being spoiled. "Moreover, the journey home is so long, and I don't have that much money." I couldn't help but laugh, gently stroking my slightly protruding belly, feeling a bit more relaxed. Serafina's social circle seemed to be putting on a show. She wanted to use this as a way to make me compromise and justify her decisions. I pretended not to notice and reminded my husband not to involve himself. I need to live for myself in this life. A few days later, Serafina called again, crying and pleading for my help, saying that her mother-in-law was overwhelmed and that the 2 kids were causing a ruckus, insisting that I come over quickly. I unexpectedly remained calm and asked her, "Where is your husband Adrian?" "Adrian comes home late every day and earns only $4,000 a month. This amount is simply not enough to cover the expenses for the 3 of us. I am your only daughter, you can't just ignore me." Sob. Serafina was crying very sadly on the phone. She had eloped for love, full of confidence that they would have a good life. It was only after having children that she realized the hardships of life, raising 2 kids on her own while her husband was busy with work and with no support from her in-laws. But this is just the beginning, the road ahead is still long, and she must bear all the consequences of her choices. "Serafina, I still want to say, you must walk your own path and take responsibility for the consequences. You chose to be with Adrian knowing that his family situation was complicated, ignoring my advice and even foregoing the bride price. Now that you regret it, it's too late. Whether you regret it or not is your business. As a mother, I have already fulfilled my responsibilities. Last time, she secretly took my household register and left. The mess she left behind for me to deal with was overwhelming. Now, I won't clean up after her anymore. Mom, is this how you treat me just because I don't listen to you? I'm your only daughter, and you often say you'll rely on me when you get old, so why aren't you helping me now? You gave birth to me, so you should take responsibility for me. I'm planning to marry Adrian, so why don't you stop me? If you really wanted to stop me, how could I possibly marry him? You didn't try hard enough and didn't tell me how serious the consequences would be. You've been through this, so how can you just stand by and watch me make this choice? Mom, I'm really disappointed and very angry." Serafina's voice was uncontrollable on the other end of the phone. She didn't blame herself or Adrian. All the resentment was directed at me. The last time, to stop her, I even knelt down and begged her not to leave, repeatedly telling her about all the possible consequences that might happen in the future. But she still chose to leave. I had told her before that Adrian's mother is in her 50s, Adrian is in his 30s, and his youngest brother is only 4 years old. This family has no pension, they are in poor health, and Adrian's mother suffers from domestic violence. They are crammed into a mud house and live in extreme poverty. But Serafina simply wouldn't listen to my advice, nothing seemed to persuade her. This time, I cautiously analyzed the situation with her, but she still complained that I hadn't been able to help her. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my emotions. There's nothing I can do, Serafina, I'm just as helpless. You are not my mom. I'm going to find Dad, he loves me the most and wouldn't treat me so coldly. After saying this, she hung up the phone. That evening, my husband returned home, looking worried as he brought up the issue with Serafina. Honey, it's natural to care about our daughter, but do we really have to keep cleaning up her messes? How much longer will she continue to act so irresponsibly? He remained silent for a moment and then said, You're right, dear. I won't get involved in this anymore, he'll just focus on making money. It's the right choice for him not to intervene, we can't let her affect us any longer. But just a few days later, Serafina unexpectedly returned with 2 children. As soon as she saw me, her eyes widened in shock and she loudly asked, Mom, are you pregnant? You're already 45. Do you still want to have another child? Mom, how can you still want a baby at this age? How badly do you want a child? Thinking back to how much I worried and took care of her before, it was really exhausting. Yet what she said made me extremely angry. I tried to calm myself down and then slapped her. That's just too much. I want the freedom to have children when I choose, and there's no need for you to interfere. I'm very disappointed in my daughter, the child I worked so hard to raise has turned against me. I want to tell you that your brother or sister will still need my care in the future. If you really decide to have a child, I will cut off our relationship and will not help you take care of the baby. Serafina's expression was one of deep dissatisfaction, her tone filled with resentment and indifference. Her words made me even more alert. Considering my physical condition, I knew I couldn't lose my temper, so after a while, I slowly began to speak. Your father and I have several million in savings, I have a pension, and your father will have retirement benefits in the future. We have a house and a car. Although we're not very wealthy, it's enough to take care of your brother, help him get married, and in the future, support him in raising children. Serafina, why are you so anxious? Each of my words pierced her heart like a knife. I once wanted to give her the very best, to make her the happiest only child, living a carefree life. I didn't even want to have a second child, fearing it would take away her resources, yet she betrayed me. In this lifetime, I must educate this ungrateful daughter well. Upon hearing this, Serafina immediately broke down in tears, forcing me to terminate the pregnancy. That night, she went live on social media, accusing me with tears streaming down her face. Every word and action of hers was filled with dissatisfaction towards me. When she pointed the camera at the 2 crying babies, it sparked sympathy and concern from internet users. Many people began to send her donations, encouraging her to face life with strength. Some started to criticize me, saying that taking care of the 2 babies was already very difficult, and that I, as an only child, was burdened since my mother initially promised to help me but then decided to have another child. The impact of one's original family on a girl is truly significant. The grandparents are unable to provide support, and she still has to take care of her younger brother. Her mother is pregnant again, making things even more difficult. Where is your husband? Has he passed away? How is it possible for you to take care of 2 children all by yourself? Her mother could clearly help with the children, but those 2 kids have cried themselves hoarse, and yet her mother won't even take a look at them. It's really very irresponsible. Not all mothers are suited to be mothers, and not all mothers love their children. Serafina is very skilled at harnessing the power of the internet. As a single mother, she has garnered a lot of sympathy and support while raising her 2 children. Meanwhile, in her live broadcasts, I am portrayed as a cold, selfish person who only cares about herself and even wants to have a second child. This is truly absurd, and she always manages to make me feel angry. Mom, did you see that? So many people support me, and at your age, you still want to have a second child, which is really puzzling. Even if I don't say anything, the comments from netizens will let you know that your choice is questionable. Serafina is proudly living in her old room, relying on donations from online supporters to get by, and yet she still mocks me. Serafina, if you're making money from your 2 kids, why aren't you taking good care of them? Aren't you afraid of being found out by netizens? I asked her seriously. After all, those 2 children cry most of the time and they are innocent. Although it was tiring to take care of my grandchildren in my previous life, they are my family. I feel sorry for the children, but I won't take on the responsibility of caring for them voluntarily. What business is it of yours anyway? I am a single mother and in a vulnerable position. I hope everyone can understand my situation. She coldly said this, her eyes filled with indifference. I immediately contacted Adrienne because I no longer wanted to worry about her 2 children in this life. I wanted her to take responsibility for them herself. He must also fulfill his responsibilities as a father. In my previous life, I knew he was unreliable, so I simply forwarded Serafina's live stream link to him. I believe that if he knew Serafina could earn rewards from live streaming, he wouldn't be content with that monthly salary of 4,000. In this lifetime, they must take responsibility for their child. Meanwhile, Serafina's live streaming room is becoming increasingly popular, and every time I enter, I see tens of thousands of viewers online. Those fans not only support her but also send essential items like baby formula, diapers, and clothes, as well as things to help her recover after giving birth. Mom, don't worry, I can rely on myself as well as on you. From now on, I want to live an extraordinary life and show you my abilities. She became increasingly irrational, seeing my gradually growing belly only deepened her resentment. One day, I received a strange package. The parcel had no sender, and out of curiosity, I opened it to find a dead mouse inside, along with a note that read, "You worthless person. You don't cherish your own daughter and only think about having a son. You are really someone who values boys over girls. Your daughter is so unfortunate to be born into a family like this, and she must feel sorry for having a mother like you." I was shaking with anger. It must have been Serafina who leaked my information. She casually spoke in the live stream, stirring up hatred against me among the viewers. Furious, I confronted Serafina, but she was there laughing happily. Mom, those are just my fans supporting me, you haven't been hurt. I have many fans around me now, and they're supporting me. What else do you have to say? As long as you agree to end this pregnancy and help take care of the grandchildren, I will still be your daughter and take care of you in the future. This is the consequence of not supporting me. No one thinks that what you're doing is right. Seeing her arrogant demeanor, I felt a strong sense of regret. I regretted having raised a daughter who is so ungrateful and only brings trouble to the family. Not only is her thinking unclear, but she also constantly puts her parents in difficult situations. Whenever her parents do not agree with her wishes, she immediately retaliates. I was extremely angry and, taking advantage of her distraction, I slapped her. Serafina came at me in anger, throwing punches and kicks with all her might. Eventually, she landed a kick to my stomach. Not long after, she exclaimed and gloatingly said, "Mom, you're bleeding. It seems like you won't be able to keep your baby." Everything went dark, and I lost consciousness. I don't know how long it was before I slowly opened my eyes and found myself lying on a hospital bed. Henry Hale had a somewhat complex expression on his face as he tightly held my hand. I quickly asked him what was going on. His warm yet firm tone was reassuring as he said, "Honey, you've given birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. We have both a son and a daughter now. However, the babies were born 2 months early and will need to stay in the incubator for a while." I was so emotional that I was on the verge of tears. After my rebirth, I went through several rounds of IVF, originally hoping to give Serafina a brother to keep her company. However, considering Serafina's personality, there were times when I felt that having her around might be more of a challenge than a blessing. Ultimately, I decided to let nature take its course and quietly implanted 2 embryos, thinking they would be twin sons. To my surprise, they turned out to be a boy and a girl, fraternal twins. "Honey, we need to take good care of these little treasures," I said. Henry Hale nodded in agreement, and Serafina expressed her desire to meet her new siblings. As soon as I heard that, my emotions surged, and I couldn't help but feel agitated. Don't even mention her. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have given birth so early. I quickly asked Henry Hale to help me get up, my heart racing with the desire to see my children. As soon as I reached the incubator, I saw Adrian had already pulled Serafina away from there. "Serafina, those are your brother and sister, what were you doing just now?" Adrian's voice was filled with anger. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he seemed extremely irritable, looking rather disheveled. His unexpected arrival had surprisingly prevented Serafina from possibly acting impulsively, which was a relief for me. At that moment, I felt a wave of tension wash over me, and I broke into a cold sweat, secretly thankful for what had happened. Serafina was filled with rage and frustration, glaring fiercely at Adrian. "Adrian, have you thought about this? You only earn 4,000 a month, so how do you have the courage to say you want to take care of me? You're not worthy of being a father, nor a husband. I left home for you and even gave birth to a child, what have you done for me in return? With a salary of 4,000, you only give me 1,000. If you can't manage financially, then you shouldn't have gotten married. It hasn't even been a year since we eloped, and how did things end up like this? She used to always say that true love is invincible, didn't she? It seems that their so-called true love turned out to be mere empty words, worn away by the trivialities of life in less than a year." Adrian was so enraged by this that he almost spat at Serafina's face. "I'm not deserving. I don't care about what you've sent me. Don't think I would find it precious. You are really naive. You were easily swayed by a few sweet words, and now you foolishly want to have children from me, devaluing yourself. Don't forget, we haven't divorced yet. Half of the money you earn online is mine, so you better hand it over. If you don't want to change, I will temporarily stay at your parents' house and cause you some trouble every day." Adrian's words sound incredibly selfish. Serafina was completely captivated by him in her past life and couldn't hear what I was saying. It seems that these two really match each other. Henry Hale and I stepped out from the shadows and coldly said, "Serafina, Adrian, I won't interfere with how you handle your future, but you must take responsibility for your child. I'm not very familiar with things online, but I know that Serafina has made quite a bit of money by taking advantage of people's sympathy. Even if I try to clarify things online now, it's likely that no one will believe me as their mother. All I can do is ensure that they don't abandon the children for their own enjoyment. Those 2 kids are innocent. Adrian, the children have been crying non-stop, and Serafina hasn't been taking care of them properly. If you don't start taking this seriously, I'm going to have to call the police. This way, I can ensure that everyone is held accountable for their actions." Serafina glared at me with anger, her eyes seeming to blaze with fury, as if she wanted to vent her frustrations at me. Without hesitation, I said, "Go take care of the children." Upon hearing this, they immediately directed their anger toward me. The 2 individuals, who were originally at odds with each other, united to blame me because of my involvement, which made me feel a deep sense of resentment. Their love-hate relationship had nothing to do with me, what mattered most to me was whether they could fulfill their responsibilities as parents. That night, the live broadcast was unusually lively, and Serafina was in tears. My mother gave birth to twins but claimed they were frail and sickly, completely ignoring my feelings and only caring about my younger siblings. She even wanted to push me away, truly embodying the saying, "Parents always lean towards their younger children." Some fans felt pity for her, thinking she was innocent, while others shared her viewpoint, seeking so-called true love, yet ultimately blaming their families for not supporting them. These 2 groups of people were manipulated by her to the point that they constantly mocked and humiliated me. Some said that my mother was biased, viewing me merely as a tool, responsible only for supporting her in old age, while the illnesses of my younger siblings required a lot of money. That money was originally mine, yet now I receive none of it. Others advised me to start earning money quickly, suggesting that if my mother could raise one child, she could manage four without any problem. They said I could hand my child over to her and see if she could truly take care of them. Such outrageous remarks left me in shock. Before having children, I had heard about the impact of the internet and thought that as long as I didn't look, nothing would happen. However, after having these two kids, the power of maternal love made it impossible for me to ignore. I had to step up to protect myself and my children. The other mothers in the hospital became my support. One of them recommended that I switch to a smartphone and taught me the skills for live streaming, helping me learn how to respond to baseless accusations. As a result, I also started live streaming, directly mentioning Serafina and playing a recording of our previous conversation where I advised her against marrying far away. My words were sincere, full of emotion and helplessness. I repeatedly advised her against marrying far away, but she believed that love could overcome everything, even wanting to elope secretly. I told her that the man's family was in poor financial condition, with low income and unhealthy parents, but she didn't care and thought she could handle it. I reminded her that the man's mother was difficult to get along with, yet she insisted that marriage was only about the two of them and had nothing to do with the mother-in-law. Despite all my concerns, she stuck to her decision and later blamed me for not stopping her and not doing everything I could to help. I initially just wanted to nurture her alone, giving her all my love and support, but her choices disappointed me, which is why I decided to have younger siblings. I hope everyone can see the struggles I've been through. With the evidence I provided, public opinion has shifted. As a result, Serafina and I have made it to the trending topics, becoming a subject of public discussion. Her decision to marry far away and ignore advice, choosing a partner who lacks ambition, has drawn considerable attention. Originally, fans who firmly supported Serafina are now starting to waver, and as the truth comes to light, she has faced numerous criticisms. Under public pressure, I once again expressed my stance. Adults must be responsible for their choices, and parents especially need to take on the responsibilities that come with having children. One of the reasons I go online is to hope that someone can supervise them and ensure they don't neglect the kids. In my past life, my daughter Serafina abandoned her child while living a carefree life, leaving me to struggle alone in taking care of the little one, which left me physically and mentally exhausted. In this life, both Serafina and Adrian must face their responsibilities and accept the scrutiny of others. Netizens' grievances towards them are growing stronger, as if they are about to be overwhelmed by it. Their image is quite poor, the daughter is obsessed with love, the father neglects the family and the children, and even the mother has to ask netizens to supervise them. No problem, we will continue to monitor them. As long as they are irresponsible towards the children, I will report them immediately to ensure they face the consequences. Serafina has really disappointed me, she played the victim and deceived me out of thousands of yuan. I thought she was a struggling single mother, but it turns out it was all her own doing. She should pay back the money. Pay it back. I was deceived as well. In my life, I absolutely despise two types of people. One is the NET who relies on their parents, and the other is those who are reckless in relationships. Serafina happens to embody both of these types. After having a child, she still wants her mother to help out, which is truly disappointing. No matter how much Serafina attacks me online, these accusations are something she cannot escape from. Her attitude towards relationships has really angered everyone this time. Adrian sensed that things were going badly and wanted to escape, but the police had already set their sights on him, making it impossible to leave. After I was discharged from the hospital, I left the two children in the incubator, they still needed to be monitored. When I returned home, I divided the yard into two sections and built a wall in the middle. One side was for Serafina and Adrian, while the other side was for us. I decided to let them stay in the countryside, as I believed they needed to learn to live independently and that city life was not suitable for them. After separating our living arrangements, I presented the property documents in front of them. You will live here from now on and strive for independence and self-improvement. Your dad, your younger siblings, and I will move to the city. I will come back to visit when I have the time. We need to keep working hard to secure a better life for your younger siblings. Since they are being criticized online, I will certainly take the opportunity to respond. Serafina looked extremely angry, as if she wanted to confront me, but she understood that she was in the wrong and couldn't say anything. At that moment, Adrian received a phone call from his mom, saying that she wasn't feeling well. I said, "Mom, you're sick. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. You can send my brother over, I'll look after him while you focus on getting better." Adrian always wanted to help, but he also found it difficult to take care of himself. Serafina was very angry when she heard this and began to blame Adrian, believing that if they couldn't even take care of their own child, they had no reason to care for his brother. She questioned him about why he would entrust his brother to their care. Adrian was not about to back down. He retorted that since she was willing to let her own child be taken care of by her mother, why couldn't he help take care of his brother? After all, she had insisted on marrying him, and she should be well aware of his family's situation. In the end, it happened after all. I suggested that we focus on raising my younger brother before considering having children, but you didn't listen. You spent all day online envying others who have children, and now that you're pregnant, you don't want to terminate the pregnancy, but now you feel like there are too many kids. I was really shocked to see them nitpicking at each other. It turns out my daughter was the one who approached him first. Although Adrian isn't very reliable, it's surprising that a guy like him could actually find a single daughter. The post-2000s girls I've met all have their own aspirations, unlike Serafina, who, despite being a college student, insists on taking a detour. These two truly are an odd couple, and I can't believe they're my daughter and son-in-law. Serafina had no words to respond, but she clenched her teeth, her face filled with anger and resentment. That night, Serafina went live again to apologize to her viewers, stating that when she was young and naive, she put too much importance on love. She recalled being so innocent at that time, believing she had found true love, only to end up with a scammer. She mentioned that her mother had also advised her, but it was just a few casual remarks without any in-depth analysis of the situation, nor did she firmly oppose it, as if she were watching her joke. She lamented that other parents are very considerate when advising their children, while her own mother seemed to lack concern. Doesn't my mom realize that she doesn't care about me at all? Just after I got married and moved away, she was busy preparing for a second child. Serafina started trying to justify herself, attempting to create an innocent image. Even though she was criticized by everyone, she refused to admit her mistakes and instead shifted all the blame onto me. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I left a comment in her live stream, asking if I had really tried to stop her at that moment, would she have listened? You had already planned to sneak away from home, were my words even meaningful at that point? Serafina is just in a bad state of mind right now, unable to face her own mistakes. Soon after, Adrian's brother was sent back home. Although the old house in the countryside isn't worth much, I intentionally left a piece of orchard for them. As long as they are willing to work hard alongside the orchard workers, the low cost of living in the countryside can still allow for a decent life. I understand that Serafina is not the type of person who can lead a stable life. Adrian, on the other hand, has a typical laid-back attitude of men. He enjoys relaxation and dislikes movement. Even when his own younger brother is at home, he pushes all the responsibility for taking care of the children onto Serafina, shamelessly claiming that managing 2 children is manageable and that 3 wouldn't be much harder. I live next door, keeping an eye on how they handle the children. Until I discovered that my daughter was exhibiting some inappropriate behavior towards Adrian's brother, I immediately reported it to the police. Serafina is suspected of child abuse, and all 3 children have been affected by her. I intentionally exaggerated some situations to draw attention. Soon, the police arrived and took the 3 children to the hospital for examination. It was found that the twins were severely malnourished, and Adrian's brother was covered in painful bruises. The plight of these 3 children is truly heartbreaking. In the hospital, Adrian confronted Serafina directly, stating that she was responsible for the children, but they all had issues. Serafina, I'm warning you, if you don't start taking care of the children properly, I won't let you off easily. Due to his brother's situation, Adrian no longer dared to leave Serafina easily. Serafina received a serious warning for her abusive behavior towards the children. Meanwhile, I quietly watched everything unfold. Not long after, the hospital returned my 2 children to me. I understood how difficult it was to take care of children, so I hired 2 nannies, each responsible for 1 child. Last time, it wasn't that I couldn't afford the nannies, it was just that my daughter stubbornly believed that my money should be spent only on her and not on hiring help. But in this life, our relationship has fractured, and I actually feel more at ease. Mom, children are born from us, we should raise them ourselves. Why spend money to hire someone else? Serafina pushed the stroller while holding a child in her arms, her eyes filled with exhaustion and prominent dark circles beneath them. Having not rested for a long time, her figure looked bloated due to hormonal imbalances, and despite being in her early 20s, she appeared much older. In her younger days, she was a slender and charming girl. I understand that hiring someone costs money, and how I spend my own money is my business, so there's no need for you to worry. I no longer have any feelings for her. Although Serafina and Adrian tried to resist, they were stopped each time by the police's warnings. Over time, they realized that they could not change their situation. Ultimately, the 2 of them could only take on the responsibility of caring for the children and working in the orchard together. While the work in the orchard did not allow them to live a wealthy life, it at least ensured they would have enough to eat. If they did not put in the effort, they would struggle to make ends meet. This is the most direct punishment for them. Serafina has never liked to work since she was young, avoiding household chores and completely steering clear of farm tasks. However, in the following decades, she would have to take responsibility for her choices, household duties, farming, and child rearing would become her entire life. I often heard her crying at midnight, lamenting that these days were unbearably painful. But it was all too late. In my previous life, I chose her, but in this life, I will live for myself.